Hello horror lovers, welcome to the channel. Before the terror begins, I want to ask you to subscribe to the channel, as it will help me a lot. Also, leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from, I'd love to know. Click the like button, all of this because the sun was sinking below the tree line as we finally pulled into the secluded campsite. My best friend Lucas was behind the wheel, a grin plastered across his face as he killed the engine. "We made it, guys," he exclaimed, turning to face the rest of us. "Let's set up camp before it gets too dark." I felt a surge of excitement as I stepped out of the car, stretching my legs after the long drive. The air was crisp and clean, filled with the scent of pine and wilderness. This was exactly what we needed, a weekend away from the chaos of college life, just the five of us. "Hey, Earth to Alex, you gonna help or just stand there daydreaming?" Mia's voice snapped me back to reality. She was already unloading gear from the trunk, her long dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. I laughed, moving to help her. "Sorry, just taking it all in. It's beautiful out here." As we unpacked, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The forest seemed too quiet, the shadows a little too deep. I brushed it off as paranoia. After all, I'd always been the anxious one of the group. "You okay, Alex?" Lucas asked, noticing my hesitation. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just a little tired from the drive, I guess." We worked together to set up our tents, the routine helping to ease my nerves. Jack and Emma, the couple of our group, bickered good-naturedly as they struggled with their tent poles. "No, Jack, it goes in this way," Emma insisted, snatching the pole from his hands. "I swear it's like you've never been camping before," Jack teased, earning him a playful swat from Emma. As the last of the daylight faded, we gathered around the newly built campfire. The flames danced merrily, pushing back the encroaching darkness and filling our little circle with warmth and light. Mia passed around bags of marshmallows and long roasting sticks. "All right, who's ready for some s'mores?" A chorus of enthusiastic responses rang out. As we toasted our marshmallows, the conversation flowed easily, filled with laughter and reminiscing about past adventures. "Remember that time Alex got chased by a goose at the park?" Jack said, nearly choking on his s'more as he laughed. I felt my face heat up. "Hey, that goose was vicious. I thought I was going to die." "Your face was priceless," Lucas added, patting me on the back. "I've never seen someone run so fast." As the night wore on, our stories turned to local legends and ghost tales. The mood shifted subtly, the darkness beyond our fire seeming to press in closer. "They say these woods are haunted," Emma said in a hushed voice, her eyes gleaming in the firelight. "Campers have reported hearing strange noises, seeing shadows move where they shouldn't." I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the cool night air. "Come on, Emma. You know those are just stories to scare tourists." But even as I said it, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I glanced over my shoulder, peering into the inky blackness between the trees. For a moment I thought I saw something move, but when I blinked, it was gone. "Did you guys hear that?" Mia suddenly asked, sitting up straight. We all fell silent, straining our ears. For a few seconds, all I could hear was the crackling of the fire and the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. Then, just on the edge of hearing, I caught it. A whisper so faint it could have been the wind, but it sounded almost like a voice. "It's probably just an animal," Lucas said, but he didn't sound convinced. "Maybe we should call it a night," I suggested, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "It's getting late and we wanted to hike tomorrow, right?" The others agreed, perhaps a little too quickly. As we doused the fire and retreated to our tents, I couldn't shake the growing sense of unease. I zipped myself into my sleeping bag, Mia already snoring softly beside me. Just as I was about to drift off, I heard it again, a whisper, closer this time, and unmistakably my name. "Alex!" I sat bolt upright, heart pounding. "Mia, did you hear that?" But Mia was fast asleep, oblivious to my panic. I lay back down, pulling my sleeping bag tight around me. It was just the wind, I told myself, just the wind playing tricks. But as I finally fell into an uneasy sleep, a part of me knew that our peaceful camping trip was about to turn into something far more terrifying than we could have ever imagined. I jolted awake, my heart pounding in my chest. Sweat beaded on my forehead, and for a moment I couldn't remember where I was. The nylon walls of the tent came into focus as my eyes adjusted to the darkness. Mia's sleeping form lay next to me, her breathing slow and steady. Alex. There it was again, my name, whispered so softly I could barely hear it. But this time, I was certain it wasn't a dream. Mia, I hissed, shaking her shoulder. Mia, wake up. She groaned, rolling over to face me. What is it, Alex? It's still dark out. I heard something, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I think someone called my name. Mia sat up, suddenly alert. What? Are you sure? Before I could answer, a scream pierced the night air. We scrambled out of our sleeping bags and unzipped the tent, stumbling into the pre-dawn gloom. To my surprise, Lucas, Emma, and Jack were already outside, looking just as confused and frightened as we were. Did you guys hear that? Lucas asked, his voice tight with tension. We all nodded, huddling together instinctively. The forest around us seemed alive with whispers and movement, shadows shifting in ways that defied the faint light. I heard my name, Emma said, her voice trembling. It sounded like me, but not me. Does that make sense? A chill ran down my spine as the others murmured in agreement. Each of us had heard our own name called in our own voice. This isn't funny, Jack said, trying to sound angry but unable to hide the fear in his voice. If this is some kind of prank. It's not us, I cut in. You know it's not. We fell silent, the weight of the situation settling over us like a heavy blanket. The once peaceful forest now felt menacing, as if every tree and shadow harbored some unseen threat. We need to get out of here, Mia said, voicing what we were all thinking. This isn't right. We should pack up and leave. No one argued. We quickly set about breaking down our campsite, working with a frantic energy born of fear. As I was rolling up my sleeping bag, I heard it again. My name, whispered right next to my ear. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Did anyone else just... I began, but the looks on my friends' faces told me they had experienced the same thing. This is impossible, Lucas muttered, running a hand through his hair. What the hell is going on? As if in answer, a low, eerie laugh echoed through the trees. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, a chorus of our own voices twisted into something unnatural and wrong. Emma let out a sob, clinging to Jack. I want to go home, please, can we just go? We finished packing in record time, throwing our gear haphazardly into the car. Lucas jumped into the driver's seat, fumbling with the keys. The engine sputtered once, twice, and then fell silent. No, 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 Lucas groaned, turning the key again. The engine refused to start. Try again, I urged, my voice rising in panic. It has to work. But no matter how many times Lucas tried, the car remained stubbornly dead. We were trapped. Okay, let's think, Mia said, always the voice of reason. We can't drive out. Maybe we can call for help. We all reached for our phones, but the result was the same. No signal, not even a single bar. This isn't possible, Jack muttered, staring at his phone in disbelief. We had signal when we got here yesterday. How can there be nothing now? A twig snapped in the forest behind us, making us all jump. When we turned to look, I could have sworn I saw a figure dart between the trees. A figure that looked disturbingly like... me. We need a plan, Lucas said, his voice shaky but determined. We can't stay here, but we can't leave either. What do we do? As we stood there, huddled together in the growing light of dawn, I realized with a sinking feeling that we were no longer in control. Whatever was out there in the forest, whatever was toying with us, it held all the cards. And as another whisper of my name floated on the breeze, I knew with chilling certainty that our nightmare was only just beginning. Maybe, I said slowly, an idea forming. Maybe we need to confront it. Whatever it is, we can't run, so maybe we need to face this thing head on. The others looked at me with a mix of fear and reluctant agreement. As we steeled ourselves for what was to come, I couldn't shake the feeling that our decision to stay might be the biggest mistake of our lives. But what choice did we have? The forest had us in its grasp, and it wasn't letting go. The sun had fully risen, but it brought no comfort. If anything, the daylight made our situation feel more surreal. We stood in a tight circle, our backs to each other, scanning the trees for any sign of movement. "So what's the plan?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We can't just stand here forever." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "We need to figure out what's going on. Maybe if we understand it, we can find a way to stop it." "And how exactly do you propose we do that?" Mia snapped, her fear manifesting as anger. "Ask the creepy voice nicely to explain itself?" "Hey, ease up," Lucas intervened. "We're all scared, but turning on each other won't help." Emma, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke up. "Guys, look at this." She was pointing at the ground near our tents. We all moved closer, and I felt my blood run cold. There, etched into the dirt, was a strange symbol. It looked like a twisted tree, its branches forming an intricate pattern that hurt my eyes if I stared at it too long. That wasn't there before, was it?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "No," Emma whispered. "I'm sure it wasn't." As we stared at the symbol, a rustling in the bushes made us all jump. We whirled around, hearts pounding, to see nothing. Just leaves moving in a breeze we couldn't feel. "That's it," Jack declared. "We're hiking out of here. I don't care how long it takes, we can't stay in this forest." We all nodded in agreement, quickly gathering what supplies we could carry. As we were about to set off, I had a thought. "Wait," I said, pulling out my phone. "Let me try to get a picture of that symbol. It might be important." I aimed my camera at the etching in the dirt, but when I looked at the screen, my blood ran cold. The symbol wasn't there. The ground in the photo was smooth, undisturbed. "What the—" I started, but my words were cut off by a blood-curdling scream. It was Emma. She was pointing at the trees, her face white with terror. "There! I saw myself!" We all turned to look, but there was nothing there. Yet Emma was shaking, insisting on what she'd seen. It was me, but wrong, like a twisted version of myself. And it was smiling at me. Lucas put an arm around her, trying to comfort her. "It's okay, Emma. We believe you. We've all been seeing and hearing strange things." As if on cue, our own voices began to echo through the forest again, a cacophony of whispers and laughter that seemed to come from all directions. "We need to move," I said urgently. "Now." We set off, trying to retrace the path we'd taken to reach our campsite, but nothing looked familiar. The trees seemed to shift and change as we walked, paths appearing and disappearing at random. "This is impossible," Mia muttered, frustration evident in her voice. "We can't have gotten this lost, we've only been walking for an hour." But we had. Somehow the forest had become a maze, and we were trapped in it. As we pushed on, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They were no longer just saying our names. Now they were speaking in full sentences, each more disturbing than the last. "Join us," my own voice whispered from somewhere to my left. "Become one with the forest. You'll never escape," Jack's voice taunted from behind a nearby tree. "This is your home now." We tried to ignore them, to push on, but with each step, it became harder to distinguish reality from the nightmare we were living. "Look," Lucas suddenly exclaimed, pointing ahead. "I think I see a clearing." Hope surged through me as we quickened our pace, but as we burst into the open space, that hope turned to ash in my mouth. We were back at our campsite. The car sat where we'd left it, our hastily abandoned tents still scattered around. "No," I breathed, disbelief and despair washing over me. "This can't be happening." As we stood there, trying to process our situation, a low, menacing chuckle filled the air. It was our voices, all of them, blended into one terrifying sound. "Welcome home," it said, the words seeming to come from the very trees around us. We huddled together, the reality of our situation finally sinking in. We were trapped, lost in a forest that seemed to be alive and malevolent, and whatever force was controlling it, it wasn't going to let us go easily. "What do we do now?" Emma asked, her voice small and frightened. I looked at my friends, seeing my own fear reflected in their eyes. "I don't know," I admitted, "but we have to stay together. It's the only way we'll survive this." Then slowly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was me. Or rather, it looked like me, but wrong somehow. Its movements were too fluid, its smile too wide, its eyes, when they caught the firelight, reflected back like a cat's. "Hello, friends," it said in my voice, but with an undercurrent that made my skin crawl. "Are you enjoying your stay?" Emma let out a strangled cry, burying her face in Jack's shoulder. Mia and Lucas jumped to their feet, placing themselves between us and the thing that wore my face. "What are you?" Lucas demanded, his voice surprisingly steady. "What do you want from us?" The creature's smile widened impossibly further. "We are the forest. We are the whispers in the dark, the shadows between the trees. And what we want?" It paused, tilting its head in an unnatural angle. "We want you to join us." "Join you?" I found myself speaking, a mix of fear and morbid curiosity driving me. "What does that mean?" The thing wearing my face turned its gaze to me, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "To become one with us. To shed your mortal forms and become part of something greater. Eternal. Powerful." "And if we refuse?" Mia asked, her voice hard. The creature's smile never wavered, but its eyes grew cold. "Then you will wander these woods forever, lost and alone, until madness claims you and you beg for the release we offer." With that, it melted back into the shadows, leaving us all shaken and disturbed. "This can't be happening," Emma sobbed. "I want to go home. I want this to be over." Jack wrapped his arms around her, but his own face was pale with fear. "We'll figure this out, Em. We'll find a way out." But as we looked at each other, I could see the doubt in everyone's eyes. How could we fight something we didn't understand? Something that could change the very reality around us? "Maybe," Mia started, then hesitated. "Maybe we should consider its offer." "What?" Lucas exclaimed. "You can't be serious." Mia held up her hands defensively. "I'm just saying, if the alternative is wandering these woods forever." "No," I said firmly. "Whatever that thing is, whatever it's offering, it's not good. We can't trust it." "Then what do we do?" Jack asked, frustration evident in his voice. "We can't stay here forever, and we can't leave. We're running out of options." As if in response to his outburst, the whispers in the forest grew louder. Our own voices, twisted and distorted, echoed through the trees. "Join us. Join us. Join us." The cacophony grew until it was almost unbearable. We clapped our hands over our ears, but it did little to block out the sound. "We need to move," I shouted over the noise. "Grab what you can and let's go." We scrambled to gather our belongings, the voices growing louder with each passing second. As we were about to leave the clearing, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The trees were moving, not swaying in the wind, but actually shifting position, closing in around us. "Run!" I yelled, grabbing Mia's hand and pulling her along. We plunged into the forest, the voices and moving trees hot on our heels. Branches whipped at our faces, roots seemed to reach up to trip us. It was like the entire forest had come alive, determined to trap us. As we ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being herded. But towards what? And would we survive long enough to find out? The forest's laughter echoed in our ears as we fled deeper into the nightmare, the boundary between reality and madness blurring with each desperate step. We ran until our lungs burned and our legs felt like lead. Finally, we collapsed in a small clearing, gasping for air. The forest around us had grown unnaturally quiet, the earlier cacophony of voices replaced by an eerie silence. Is everyone okay? I panted, scanning our group. Lucas nodded, helping Emma to her feet. I think so. But where are we? We looked around, trying to get our bearings. The clearing was bathed in an otherworldly silvery light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The trees surrounding us were twisted and gnarled, their branches reaching towards us like grasping fingers. This doesn't look like any part of the forest we've seen before, Mia observed, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack pulled out his phone, more out of habit than hope. Still no signal and... Guys, look at this. He held up the screen for us to see. The clock was spinning wildly, the numbers blurring into meaningless streaks. What does that mean? Emma asked, her voice trembling. I think, I said slowly, the realization dawning on me. I think we're not just lost in the forest anymore. We might be lost in time itself. The weight of that statement hung heavy in the air. We huddled closer together, seeking comfort in each other's presence. Suddenly, a twig snapped loudly in the darkness beyond our clearing. We all tensed, ready to run again if necessary. Hello? A voice called out. It sounded human, normal even. Is someone there? We exchanged wary glances. After everything we'd been through, it was hard to trust anything in this forest. Should we answer? Mia whispered. Before we could decide, a figure stumbled into the clearing. It was an old man, his clothes tattered and his beard long and unkempt. He blinked at us in surprise, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. Oh my, he said, his voice cracking with disuse. It's been so long since I've seen people. Who are you? Lucas asked cautiously. How long have you been out here? The old man's brow furrowed in concentration. My name is Thomas, I think. And as for how long, he trailed off, looking lost. I don't know. Time doesn't work right here. It could be days or years or decades. I finished for him, a chill running down my spine. Thomas nodded sadly. You're trapped here too, aren't you? Just like me. Just like the others. Others? Emma perked up. There are other people here? The old man's eyes darkened. There were, but they're gone now, taken by the forest. We all fell silent, the implications of his words sinking in. Finally, Jack spoke up. Thomas, do you know what's happening here? What is this place? The old man sighed heavily, lowering himself to sit on a nearby log. This forest, it's alive, sentient, and hungry. It feeds on fear, on despair, on the very essence of those it traps here. But why? Mia asked. Why does it do this? Thomas shrugged. Who can understand the motivations of something so alien? All I know is that it's been doing this for a very long time, and it won't stop until... He trailed off, his eyes growing distant. We waited for him to continue, but he remained silent, lost in some private memory or thought. Until what, Thomas? I prompted gently. He blinked, focusing on us again. Until it stopped. But I don't know how. I've tried everything I could think of, but nothing works. The forest always wins in the end. A heavy silence fell over us. The hopelessness of our situation threatened to overwhelm me, but I pushed it back. We couldn't give up. Not yet. There has to be a way, I said, more firmly than I felt. We just need to figure it out. As if in response to my defiance, a low rumble echoed through the forest. The ground beneath our feet began to tremble. Oh no, Thomas whispered, his eyes wide with fear. It's coming. We need to move, now. We scrambled to our feet, looking around wildly for an escape route. But the trees were closing in, their branches intertwining to form an impenetrable barrier. What's happening? Emma cried out, clinging to Jack. Thomas's face was grim. The forest is changing again. It's trying to separate us. Whatever you do, don't let go of each other. As he spoke, The ground beneath us began to shift and crack. Fissures opened up, threatening to swallow us whole. "Hold on!" I shouted, grabbing Mia's hand tightly. But it was too late. With a deafening roar, the earth split apart, and we were plunged into darkness. The last thing I heard was the terrified screams of my friends as we were torn away from each other, swallowed by the hungry forest. As I fell, a single thought echoed in my mind. Would I ever see my friends again? Or had the forest finally won I came to with a start, my head throbbing and my mouth dry? For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was or what had happened. Then it all came rushing back. The forest, the entity, Thomas, and the ground splitting beneath us. "Mia? Lucas?" I called out, my voice hoarse. "Emma? Jack? Anyone?" Only silence answered me. I was alone in a small clearing surrounded by dense, twisted trees that seemed to loom over me menacingly. The silvery light that had illuminated the previous clearing was gone, replaced by a sickly green glow that emanated from fungus growing on the trees. I struggled to my feet, fighting off a wave of dizziness. "Hello?" I tried again, desperation creeping into my voice. "Can anyone hear me?" "They can't hear you, Alex," a familiar voice said from behind me. I spun around to find myself face to face with myself, or rather the entity wearing my face. "Where are my friends?" I demanded, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. The entity smiled, a cold, cruel expression that looked wrong on my face. "They're here, in the forest, scattered, alone, afraid, just like you." I clenched my fists, anger momentarily overriding my fear. "Let them go. Let us all go." The entity laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the trees. "Oh, Alex, you still don't understand, do you? You can't leave. You're part of the forest now, part of us." "No," I said, shaking my head vehemently. "We're not. We won't give in to you." The entity's smile widened. "You say that now. But time works differently here, remember? How long do you think you can resist? A day? A week? A year? Eventually, you'll beg to join us, just to end the loneliness, the fear, the madness." As it spoke, the forest around us seemed to come alive. Shadows danced between the trees, whispering my name. The ground beneath my feet writhed, roots curling around my ankles. "Stop it!" I yelled, stumbling backward. "This isn't real. It's all in my head." "Is it?" the entity asked, tilting its head in that unnatural way. "Are you sure about that, Alex? How can you trust your own senses in this place?" I closed my eyes, trying to center myself. "My friends," I said, opening my eyes to glare at the entity. "I want to see them. Now." The entity considered me for a moment, then shrugged. "As you wish." Suddenly, the forest around us shimmered and changed. We were standing on the edge of a vast chasm, and on the other side, I could see my friends. They were separated, each trapped in their own nightmarish scenario. Mia was running through an endless maze, panic clear on her face as the walls closed in around her. Lucas was surrounded by mirrors, each one showing a different, twisted version of himself. Emma was frozen in place, dark vines slowly creeping up her body. And Jack was fighting off shadowy versions of all of us, his face a mask of confusion and fear. "Stop it!" I cried out, reaching towards them instinctively. "Leave them alone." The entity chuckled. "But Alex, this is what they chose. Each of them is facing their deepest fears, their darkest thoughts, and soon, they'll break. They'll join us, just like you will." I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. "No, we're stronger than that. We'll find a way out." "Such determination," the entity mused. "It's admirable, really, but futile. You can't save them, Alex. You can't even save yourself." As if to prove its point, the ground beneath me began to crumble. I scrambled backward, but there was nowhere to go. The chasm yawned before me, promising an endless fall. "Join us, Alex," the entity said, its voice echoing from everywhere at once. End this struggle. Become one with the forest, and you'll never be alone again. For a moment, a tiny part of me was tempted. The offer of an end to this nightmare, to the fear and uncertainty, was almost overwhelming. But then I thought of my friends, still fighting their own battles. I couldn't abandon them. Never, I spat, glaring at the entity. Its expression hardened, then suffered. The ground gave way completely, and I was falling, tumbling through darkness. The entity's laughter followed me down, a haunting sound that seemed to go on forever. As I fell, I made a silent promise to my friends and to myself. I would find a way to save them. I would find a way to beat this thing. No matter how long it took, no matter what I had to endure, I wouldn't give up. The darkness swallowed me whole, and I braced myself for whatever nightmare awaited me next. The forest may have separated us, but it hadn't broken us. Not yet. And as long as we still had hope, we still had a chance. I landed with a thud on soft, mossy ground. The fall seemed to have lasted both an eternity and mere seconds. As I struggled to my feet, I found myself in yet another unfamiliar part of the ever-changing forest. The trees here were ancient, their trunks wider than cars and their canopies so dense that barely any light filtered through. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing strangely in the stillness. "Is anyone there?" A rustling sound to my left made me whirl around. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure disappearing behind a tree. "Mia!" I shouted, hope surging through me. "Mia, is that you?" I took off running in the direction I'd seen the figure, pushing through thick underbrush. As I rounded a massive tree trunk, I came face to face with Mia. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. Something was off about her. "Alex," she said, her voice flat and emotionless. "You're here." I took a step closer, then hesitated. Her eyes were wrong, dull and lifeless, like glass marbles. "Mia? Are you okay?" I asked cautiously. She tilted her head, the movement too smooth to be natural. "I'm fine, Alex. Better than fine. I've joined with the forest. You should too. It's wonderful here." My heart sank as I realized this wasn't really Mia. It was another trick of the forest, another cruel illusion. "You're not Mia," I said, backing away slowly. "What have you done with her? With all of my friends?" The thing wearing Mia's face smiled, the expression not quite reaching its eyes. "They're here, Alex. All around us, part of us now. Why don't you join us? No more fear, no more pain. Just peace and unity with nature." "No," I said firmly, even as my voice shook. "I won't give up on them, on any of them." The Mia thing's expression hardened. "Then you'll wander these woods alone forever. Is that what you want, Alex? To be alone for eternity?" Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the air. "Alex, don't listen to it." I spun around to see Lucas stumbling through the underbrush, looking haggard but very much himself. "Lucas!" I cried out, relief flooding through me. I started towards him, but the Mia thing grabbed my arm with inhuman strength. "Stay!" it hissed, its face contorting into something monstrous. "Become one with us." "Let him go!" Lucas shouted, charging forward. He tackled the creature, sending all three of us tumbling to the ground. In the chaos, I managed to wrench free. Lucas scrambled to his feet, grabbing my hand. "Run!" he yelled. We took off through the forest, the angry shrieks of the Mia thing echoing behind us. As we ran, the forest seemed to come alive around us, branches reaching out to grab us, roots rising to trip us. "What happened?" I gasped as we ran. "How did you find me?" Lucas vaulted over a fallen log, pulling me along. "I've been searching for everyone since we got separated. I think I'm starting to understand this place. It feeds on our fear, our despair. The more we give in, the stronger it gets." We burst into a small clearing and paused to catch our breath. The sounds of pursuit had faded, but I knew we couldn't let our guard down. "Have you seen the others?" I asked, hope and dread warring in my chest. Lucas's face fell. "I saw Emma earlier, but Alex, I think she's given in. She didn't recognize me. Her eyes were wrong." I felt a pang of guilt and sorrow. Like Mia back there? He nodded grimly. Exactly like that. And I haven't seen Jack at all. I slumped against a tree, the weight of our situation bearing down on me. What are we going to do, Lucas? How can we save them if they've already given in? Lucas was quiet for a moment, his brow furrowed in thought. I have a theory, he said slowly. I think we might be able to break the forest's hold on them if we can remind them of who they really are. Shock them out of it somehow. But how? I asked, grasping at this sliver of hope. Before Lucas could answer, a blood-curdling scream tore through the air. It was Jack's voice, filled with terror and pain. Jack! We both yelled, immediately on alert. It came from that direction, Lucas said, pointing deeper into the forest. We have to help him. I nodded, pushing aside my exhaustion and fear. Let's go. We're not losing anyone else to this place. As we plunged back into the dense forest, following the sound of Jack's voice, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running out of time. The forest was picking us off one by one and our group was fracturing. But as long as we had each other, as long as we didn't give up hope, we still had a chance. Hold on, Jack, I muttered under my breath as we ran. We're coming, just hold on. The forest loomed around us, watchful and hungry, as we raced to save our friend from whatever nightmare he had fallen into. Little did we know, our own resolve was about to be tested in ways we could never have imagined. Lucas and I crashed through the undergrowth, following the echoes of Jack's screams. The forest seemed to be actively working against us, branches whipping at our faces and roots rising to trip us. But we pressed on, driven by desperation and the fading hope of rescuing our friend. Suddenly, we burst into a small clearing and skidded to a halt. There, in the center, was Jack. He was on his knees, hands pressed against his ears, eyes squeezed shut. Around him, shadowy figures danced and taunted, twisted versions of ourselves. Jack, I yelled, starting towards him, but Lucas grabbed my arm, holding me back. Wait, he hissed. Look closely. I did, and my blood ran cold. The ground around Jack was moving, writhing. Thousands of black, thread-like tendrils were slowly creeping up his body, trying to envelope him. We have to do something, I whispered urgently. Lucas nodded, his face grim. Remember what I said about shocking them out of it? I think this is our chance. But we have to be careful. If those things touch us, I understood. We could easily end up trapped, just like Jack. Jack! I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. Jack, it's us! Alex and Lucas. This isn't real. You have to fight it. Jack's eyes snapped open, but they were unfocused, seeing something we couldn't. No, he moaned. No, stay away. You're not real. The shadow versions of us laughed, the sound chilling and wrong. We're the only real things here, Jack. Shadow Me taunted. Your friends abandoned you. They left you to us. That's not true, Lucas shouted. We're right here, Jack. We came back for you. Jack's gaze darted around wildly, trying to locate our voices amidst the cacophony of the shadows. The tendrils were up to his waist now, pulsing with an eerie light. I racked my brain, trying to think of something, anything that would break through to him. Then it hit me. Jack! I yelled. Remember the goose? The one that chased me in the park? You said you'd never seen anyone run so fast. For a moment, Jack's eyes seemed to clear. Alex? He murmured. Yes, I pressed on. And remember when we all went camping last summer? You and Emma got your tent poles mixed up and spent an hour arguing about it. Lucas? Jack's voice was stronger now, more certain. The shadow figures began to flicker and distort, their laughter turning to angry hisses. Don't listen to them, Shadow Emma screeched. They're lying to you. But Jack was looking around with more clarity now, his gaze finally landing on us. Alex? Lucas? Is it really you? Yes, we both shouted, Jack, listen to me, Lucas said urgently. Those things around you, they're not real. But they will be if you don't fight them off. You have to move. Jack looked down, seeming to notice the tendrils for the first time. Horror spread across his face. Oh, God, he whispered. You can do it, Jack, I encouraged. They only have power if you believe in them. Stand up. Come towards us. With a cry of effort, Jack began to struggle against the tendrils. They writhed and tightened, trying to hold him in place, but he fought harder. Inch by inch, he began to stand. The shadow figures were fading now, their angry cries becoming distant, but the tendrils weren't giving up so easily. As Jack took his first stumbling step towards us, they surged up, trying to pull him back. No, Jack yelled, his face contorted with effort. I won't let you take me. With a final, desperate lunge, he broke free of the tendrils and stumbled towards us. Lucas and I rushed forward, catching him before he could fall. The moment we touched him, the tendrils recoiled as if burned, slithering back into the earth. We've got you, I said, holding on to Jack tightly. You're safe now. Jack was shaking, his breath coming in ragged gasps. It was horrible, he mumbled. I could feel it trying to get inside my head, to make me forget who I was. But you didn't, Lucas said firmly. You fought it off, Jack, you won. As the adrenaline of the moment faded, I looked around warily. The forest was quiet now, too quiet. We should move, I said. I don't think we're safe here. Lucas nodded in agreement. Can you walk, Jack? Jack took a deep breath and straightened up. Yeah, I think so. Where are we going? I exchanged a look with Lucas. To find Emma and Mia, I said. We're not leaving anyone behind. As we helped Jack out of the clearing, I couldn't shake the feeling that our victory, while significant, was only the beginning. The forest had shown its hand now, revealing the true nature of its power, and I knew with chilling certainty that it wouldn't give up its prey so easily. Stay strong, I murmured, more to myself than to the others. We're going to get through this, all of us. But as we ventured deeper into the twisted heart of the forest, I couldn't help but wonder, at what cost? We trudged through the ever-shifting landscape of the forest, supporting Jack between us. The trees seemed to grow denser and more twisted with each step, their branches intertwining overhead to block out what little light remained. Does anyone else feel like we're being watched? Jack muttered, his eyes darting nervously from shadow to shadow. I nodded grimly. I think we're always being watched here. The forest itself is alive, remember? As if in response to my words, a cold wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the faint echo of laughter. Our laughter, distorted and wrong. Lucas stopped abruptly, holding up a hand for silence. Do you hear that? We froze, straining our ears. At first I heard nothing but the usual creaks and rustles of the forest. Then, faintly, I caught it. A soft, melodic humming. It's coming from over there, Jack said, pointing to a faint glow between the trees. Cautiously, we made our way towards the sound. As we got closer, the humming grew louder, and I realized with a start that I recognized the tune. It was a lullaby that Emma's mother used to sing to her. We emerged into a small clearing and stopped short at the sight before us. The entire area was filled with strange, luminescent flowers, their petals pulsing with an eerie, hypnotic light. And in the center, sitting cross-legged and swaying gently, was Emma. Emma! Jack called out, starting forward. But Lucas grabbed his arm, holding him back. Wait, he whispered. Something's not right. I looked closer and felt my heart sink. Emma's eyes were open, but they were unfocused, staring at nothing. The flowers around her seemed to be growing, their tendrils slowly curling up her legs. Emma? I called softly. Can you hear me? She didn't respond, continuing to hum her lullaby as if we weren't there. We stumbled out of the clearing, the angry screeches of the flowers following us. Lucas and Jack were there, catching us as we nearly fell. Go, I yelled. Run! We took off through the forest, branches whipping at our faces as we fled. Behind us, I could hear the sound of pursuit, a slithering, rustling noise that sent chills down my spine. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, we collapsed in exhaustion, our lungs burning. I think we lost them," Jack panted. Emma was shaking, her eyes wide with residual fear. "What were those things? And how did we get here? The last thing I remember is the ground splitting open and then nothing." I exchanged glances with Lucas and Jack. "It's a long story," I said gently. "The important thing is, you're safe now. We're together." "Not all of us," Lucas pointed out grimly. "We still need to find Mia." A heavy silence fell over us as we contemplated the task ahead. We were all exhausted, both physically and mentally. But we couldn't give up, not when we were so close to being whole again. "We'll rest for a bit," I decided. "Then we'll keep moving. Mia's out there somewhere, and we're going to find her." As we settled in to catch our breath, I couldn't shake the feeling that our ordeal was far from over. The forest had shown us new horrors with each passing hour, and I dreaded to think what might be waiting for us next. But looking at my friends, battered and scared, but alive and fighting, I felt a flicker of hope. We'd made it this far together, and somehow, some way, we'd make it the rest of the way too. The forest might be alive and hungry, but so were we, and we weren't going down without a fight. The forest had grown unnaturally quiet as we pushed on, searching for any sign of Mia. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of our labored breathing and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. "Does anyone else feel like we're going in circles?" Jack asked, his voice hushed. Emma nodded, her eyes darting nervously around. "Everything looks the same. How can we be sure we're making any progress?" I was about to respond when Lucas held up a hand, signaling us to stop. "Listen," he whispered. We all fell silent, straining our ears. At first I heard nothing, then faintly I caught it, a soft melodic sound drifting through the trees. "Is that singing?" Emma asked, her brow furrowed in confusion. The voice grew clearer as we listened. It was hauntingly beautiful, but there was something off about it, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "It's Mia," I said, recognizing the voice despite its otherworldly quality. "But something's wrong." We moved towards the sound, our progress slow and cautious. As we drew closer, the air around us seemed to thicken, becoming hazy and dreamlike. Strange, ethereal lights danced between the trees, leading us deeper into the heart of the forest. Finally, we emerged into a clearing and stopped short, stunned by the sight before us. Mia stood in the center of the clearing, but she was changed. Her feet hovered inches above the ground, her hair floating around her as if suspended in water. Her eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and her voice echoed with power as she sang in a language none of us recognized. Around her, the very fabric of reality seemed to be unraveling. Trees bent and twisted into impossible shapes. Flowers bloomed and withered in seconds, and the sky above flickered between day and night. "Mia?" I called out, my voice cracking. "Mia, can you hear me?" Her song faltered for a moment, her glowing eyes fixing on me. "Alex," she said, her voice resonating strangely. "You're here. You're all here. Isn't it beautiful?" "What's beautiful, Mia?" Lucas asked cautiously. "What's happening to you?" Mia smiled, the expression somehow both serene and terrifying. "I understand now. I can see everything. The forest, the world, the universe. It's all connected, and we can be part of it. We can be everything." "This isn't you, Mia," Emma pleaded. "The forest is tricking you, changing you. You have to fight it." Mia's expression hardened. "No, you don't understand. This is evolution. This is transcendence. Why can't you see how wonderful it is?" She raised her hands, and the clearing around us began to shift and change more rapidly. Reality itself seemed to be coming apart at the seams. "We have to do something," Jack yelled over the increasing chaos. "We're losing her!" I steeled myself and stepped forward, even as the ground beneath my feet rippled like water. "Mia, listen to me. This isn't real. The forest is using you, feeding off your power. You have to break free. Stay back, Mia shouted, her voice booming with unnatural force. A shockwave of energy pulsed out from her, knocking us all off our feet. As I struggled to stand, my mind raced. How could we reach her? How could we break through the forest's influence? Then, a memory surfaced. Mia, laughing as we sat around a campfire on a summer night years ago. She had been telling us about her dreams, her hopes for the future, her passion for life, for experiencing everything the world had to offer. Mia, I called out, pouring every ounce of emotion I could into my voice. Remember who you are. Remember your dreams, traveling the world, writing that novel, falling in love. The forest can't give you that. It can only take it away. For a moment, the chaos around us seemed to pause. Mia's glowing eyes flickered, confusion crossing her face. That's it, Mia. Lucas joined in. Remember us. Remember all the plans we made, all the adventures we were going to have. Movie nights, Emma added. Late-night study sessions. That time we got lost in the city and ended up having the best day ever. Your family, Jack said. Your little sister who looks up to you so much. They're waiting for you to come home. Tears began to stream down Mia's face, glowing like liquid starlight. I remember, she whispered, but it's so hard to hold on. The forest, it's so strong. You're stronger, I insisted, reaching out to her. Take my hand, Mia. Come back to us. For a heart-stopping moment, Mia hesitated. Then, with a cry that was equal parts anguish and determination, she grasped my hand. There was a blinding flash of light and a shock wave that knocked us all to the ground. When my vision cleared, I saw Mia collapsed in the center of the clearing, the supernatural glow fading from her skin. We rushed to her side, gathering around her protectively. As Mia's eyes fluttered open, I saw with relief that they were her own again. No otherworldly glow, just the warm brown I remembered. Welcome back, I said softly, helping her sit up. Mia looked around at all of us, her expression a mix of confusion, relief, and lingering fear. What happened? What did I almost do? It doesn't matter, Lucas said firmly. You fought it off. You came back to us. That's all that matters. As we hugged Mia, relief washing over us, I couldn't shake the feeling that our victory was temporary. The forest had gone quiet again, but I sensed it was far from defeated. We were together again, but we were still trapped. And I had a sinking feeling that the forest's next move would be its most terrifying yet. The momentary relief of reuniting with Mia quickly gave way to a renewed sense of urgency. The forest around us had grown unnaturally still, as if holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come. We need to move, I said, helping Mia to her feet. I don't think we're safe here. Mia swayed slightly, still weak from her ordeal. Where can we go? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The forest. It's everywhere. Lucas stepped forward, his face set with determination. We find a way out. There has to be an edge to this place, a boundary we can cross. As if in response to his words, a low rumble shook the ground beneath our feet. The trees around us began to shift and move, their branches twisting and intertwining to form an impenetrable wall. It's trying to trap us, Emma cried, backing away from the encroaching vegetation. Jack spun around, searching for an opening. There, he shouted, pointing to a narrow gap in the living barrier. Run! We sprinted towards the opening, our hearts pounding in our ears. I could hear the forest coming alive behind us, branches snapping and leaves rustling as it gave chase. We burst through the gap just as it began to close, branches scraping our skin as we tumbled to the ground on the other side. For a moment we lay there, gasping for breath. Is everyone okay? I asked, pushing myself up to look at the others. They nodded, brushing leaves and dirt from their clothes as they stood. But as I took in our surroundings, my heart sank. We were in another clearing, larger than the last, but just as alien and unsettling. The ground beneath our feet pulsed with an eerie, bioluminescent glow. Strange, fungus-like growths clung to the trees, their spores drifting through the air like glowing snowflakes. And at the center of it all stood a massive ancient tree, its trunk twisted into the semblance of a face. "What is this place?" Emma whispered, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. Before anyone could respond, a deep, resonant voice filled the air. "Welcome, children," it said, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Welcome to the heart of the forest." We huddled closer together, watching in horror as the face in the tree trunk began to move, its wooden features twisting into a grotesque smile. What are you?" Lucas demanded, his voice wavering slightly. The tree face chuckled, the sound like creaking branches in a storm. "I am the forest. I am the spirit that dwells in every leaf, every root, every grain of soil. And you, my dear children, are my guests." "Guests?" Jack scoffed. "More like prisoners. We want to go home." The forest spirit's eyes narrowed, glowing with an inner fire. "Home? But why would you want to leave? I've shown you wonders beyond your wildest dreams. I've offered you power, transcendence, unity with nature itself. What more could you possibly want?" Mia stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "We want our lives back. Our real lives, not some twisted fantasy you've created." The spirit's expression darkened. "Your real lives? Full of pollution, destruction, the slow death of the natural world? You humans are a plague upon this earth. Here, in my realm, you could be so much more." I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized the true nature of our captor. This wasn't just some mindless force of nature. It was intelligent, angry, and deeply resentful of humanity. "We're not all bad," I argued, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yes, humans have made mistakes, but we're also capable of great kindness, of love, of creating beauty in the world." "Lies!" the spirit roared, its voice shaking the very ground. "I have seen the future your kind will bring, nothing but ash and ruin." The clearing began to shift and change around us, transforming into a hellish landscape of barren earth and withered trees. The air grew thick with smoke and the stench of decay. "This is what awaits if you leave," the spirit hissed. "This is the future you'll create. Stay here, become one with the forest, and you can prevent this. You can save the world." For a moment I felt doubt creep into my heart. What if it was right? What if this was our chance to make a real difference? But then I looked at my friends, saw the fear and determination in their eyes, and I knew we couldn't give in. "No," I said firmly. "This isn't the answer. Trapping us here won't save anything. If you really want to help, let us go. Let us return to our world and fight for change there, where it really matters." The spirit's face contorted with rage. "Foolish children, if you will not join willingly, then I will take you by force." The ground beneath our feet began to soften and bubble, tendrils of vegetation bursting forth to wrap around our legs, the air filled with spores making it hard to breathe. "Stay together," I yelled, grabbing Emma's hand as she started to sink into the ground. "We can fight this. Remember who you are. Remember your strength." As we struggled against the forest's assault, I saw a flicker of something in the spirit's eyes. Was it doubt? Fear? For a moment, its certainty seemed to waver. And in that moment, I realized that maybe, just maybe, we had a chance. Not just to escape, but to change the forest itself. To show it that humanity, for all its flaws, was worth believing in. The battle for our lives, and perhaps for the future of two worlds, had only just begun. The forest's assault intensified, tendrils of vegetation wrapping tighter around our legs as the ground beneath us continued to soften and shift. The air grew thick with glowing spores, making it increasingly difficult to breathe. "We can't give up," I gasped, struggling to keep my footing. "There has to be a way out of this." Lucas, his face contorted with effort, managed to free one of his legs. "The spirit," he shouted over the cacophony of creaking wood and rustling leaves. "It's the key. We need to reach it." Mia, who had been unnaturally still for the past few moments, suddenly opened her eyes. They glowed faintly with residual power from her earlier transformation. I can feel it, she whispered. The forest's pain, its fear. It's not just angry, it's terrified. Terrified of what? Emma asked, her voice strained as she fought against the entangling vines. Of loss, Mia replied, her gaze distant. Of being forgotten, destroyed, replaced by concrete and steel. Jack, who had been using a broken branch to fend off the attacking vegetation, paused. So it's not evil, he said, realization dawning on his face. It's just trying to survive. I looked up at the spirit's face, twisted in a rictus of rage and pain. Suddenly, I saw it not as a malevolent entity, but as a wounded, cornered animal lashing out in fear. We need to show it another way, I said, an idea forming. We need to prove that we can coexist, that we can protect it without being trapped here. With renewed determination, we began to push through the grasping vegetation towards the central tree. Each step was a battle, the forest fighting us with every fiber of its being. Spirit of the forest, I called out as we inched closer. Please listen to us. We understand now. We understand your fear, your pain. Lies, the spirit roared, its wooden face contorting. You understand nothing. You are destroyers, nothing more. No, Emma shouted back. We're protectors too. We love nature. We want to preserve it. Then why do you resist? The spirit demanded. Why do you not embrace the unity I offer? Lucas, who had managed to get closest to the tree, pressed his hand against its bark. Because that's not the answer, he said, his voice gentle but firm. Trapping us here won't save your world or ours. It will only create more fear, more resentment. We can be your ambassadors, Mia added, her eyes still glowing faintly. We can go back and tell others what we've seen, what we've learned. We can fight for you in the real world. The spirit's attacks faltered slightly, uncertainty creeping into its expression. How can I trust you? Humans have made promises before, only to break them. Then don't just trust our words, I said, stepping forward. Look into our hearts. You've been in our minds. You've seen our memories. You know we're capable of compassion, of change. For a long moment, the clearing was silent save for the gentle rustling of leaves. Then slowly, the vegetative tendrils began to loosen their grip. I see, the spirit said, its voice softer now, tinged with wonder. Your minds are so complex, so full of contradictions, capable of great destruction, yes, but also of great love. The ground solidified beneath our feet, and the oppressive atmosphere began to lift. We found ourselves able to breathe easily once more. So you'll let us go? Jack asked cautiously. The spirit's face shifted, forming an expression that was almost sad. Yes, it said, but I ask something of you in return. What is it? I asked, both relieved and wary. Remember, the spirit replied. Remember what you've seen here. Remember the life that pulses through every leaf, every root. And when you return to your world, fight for us. Be our voice among those who would silence us forever. We looked at each other, a silent agreement passing between us. We will, I promised. We'll never forget, and we'll do everything we can to protect places like this. The spirit nodded, and the clearing began to shimmer and fade around us. Then go, it said, its voice growing distant. Go and bring change to your world. But know this, a part of the forest will always be with you, watching, hoping. As the world dissolved into a swirl of light and color, I felt a profound sense of both loss and purpose. We were leaving this magical, terrifying place, but we were taking its message with us. The light grew brighter, enveloping us completely. I felt my friend's hands in mine, anchoring me as we were swept away by a force beyond our understanding. And then, with a rush of wind and a disorienting lurch, we found ourselves standing at the edge of the forest where our journey had begun. The ordinary sounds of the world, Distant traffic, chirping birds, seemed almost alien after our otherworldly experience. For a moment we stood in stunned silence, hardly daring to believe it was over. Then slowly smiles began to spread across our faces. "We made it," Emma whispered, tears in her eyes. "We're home." As we hugged each other, laughing and crying with relief, I couldn't shake the feeling that our adventure was far from over. We had escaped the forest, yes, but we had also been changed by it. We had a promise to keep, a mission to fulfill. The real challenge, I realized, was just beginning. But as I looked at my friends, saw the determination in their eyes, I knew we were ready for it. Together we would face the world anew, carrying the spirit of the forest within our hearts. The sun was setting as we stumbled out of the forest, casting long shadows across the familiar landscape. For a moment, we stood in stunned silence, drinking in the sights and sounds of the ordinary world we had left behind. "Is it really over?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of relief and disbelief. I reached out and squeezed her hand. "I think so," I said, though a part of me still expected the trees behind us to come alive and drag us back in. Lucas checked his phone, his eyes widening in surprise. "Guys, you're not going to believe this. According to my phone, we've only been gone for a few hours." "What?" Jack exclaimed. "But that's impossible. We were in there for days." Mia shook her head, a wry smile on her face. "Time works differently in there, remember? Who knows how long we really were gone?" As the reality of our return began to sink in, I noticed something strange. The world around us seemed different. Colors appeared more vivid, the rustling of leaves sounded clearer, and I could swear I felt the pulse of life in the ground beneath my feet. "Do you guys feel that?" I asked, looking around at my friends. They nodded, their expressions a mixture of awe and confusion. "It's like I can sense everything," Emma said, her eyes wide. "The trees, the grass, even the insects in the soil." "The spirit of the forest," Mia murmured. "It said a part of it would always be with us. I think this is what it meant." We stood there for a while, marveling at our newfound connection to nature. But as the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, reality began to set in. "We should head back," Lucas said, his voice bringing us out of our reverie. "Our families must be worried sick." The mention of family sent a jolt through all of us. In the midst of our otherworldly adventure, we had almost forgotten about the lives we had left behind. As we started walking towards town, Jack suddenly stopped. "Wait," he said, his face pale. "What are we going to tell everyone? They'll never believe what really happened." It was a sobering thought. How could we possibly explain our experience in a way that wouldn't sound completely insane? "We don't have to tell them everything," I said after a moment of thought. "We can say we got lost in the woods, that our phones didn't have signal. It's not exactly a lie." The others nodded in agreement, though I could see the conflict in their eyes. Keeping our experience a secret felt wrong somehow, but we all knew it was necessary. As we approached the outskirts of town, lights from houses and street lamps began to appear. The sight of civilization, so ordinary and yet so strange after our ordeal, brought a lump to my throat. "Before we go home," Mia said, stopping us, "we need to talk about what we're going to do next. We made a promise, remember?" I nodded, feeling the weight of our commitment to the forest spirit. "We did. We promised to be its voice, to fight for nature in our world." "But how?" Emma asked. "We're just kids. How can we make a difference?" Lucas's face set in determination. "We start small. We join environmental groups at school, organize cleanup drives, spread awareness about conservation. We could start a blog," Jack suggested. "Share what we've learned, encourage others to connect with nature." As we discussed our plans, I felt a surge of hope and purpose. We had been through an incredible, terrifying experience, but we had come out of it stronger, more connected to each other and to the world around us. "Whatever we do," I said, looking at each of my friends in turn, "we do it together. The forest showed us the power of unity, and that's how we'll make a difference." They nodded, their faces reflecting the same determination. We had been changed by our journey, marked by the spirit of the forest, and now it was our turn to change the world. As we finally parted ways to return to our homes, I couldn't help but look back at the forest one last time. In the moonlight, it looked peaceful, ordinary. But I knew better now. I knew the magic and life that pulsed within those trees, the ancient wisdom and power that dwelled there. "Thank you," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if the spirit could hear me. "We won't," promise echoing in my heart. I turned and walked towards home. Our adventure in the magical forest was over, but our real journey was just beginning. And whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew we would face them together, carrying the spirit of the forest with us always. As I reached my front door, I took a deep breath, preparing myself for the questions and concern that awaited me inside. But I also felt a sense of excitement. Tomorrow would be the start of something new, something important. And I couldn't wait to see what the future held for us, the guardians of the forest's secret. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity as we readjusted to our normal lives while secretly planning our environmental mission. We had agreed to meet at our favorite cafe after school to discuss our progress and next steps. As I pushed open the door, the rich aroma of coffee enveloped me. I spotted my friends at our usual corner table, their heads bent together in deep conversation. "Hey guys," I said, sliding into the empty seat. "Sorry I'm late. Mr. Thompson kept us after class to talk about the science fair." Emma looked up, her eyes bright with excitement. "That's perfect timing, actually. We were just brainstorming ideas for our first big project." Lucas nodded, pushing a notebook towards me. "We've got a few options, but we're leaning towards something that combines education and direct action." I scanned the list, impressed by their ideas. "These are great. What's our top choice?" "We're thinking of organizing a Forest Awareness Week at school," Mia explained. "We could have informational booths, guest speakers, and end it with a tree planting event in the community park." "That sounds amazing," I said, feeling a surge of enthusiasm. "But how are we going to get the school on board?" Jack grinned, leaning back in his chair. "Already taken care of. I talked to Ms. Rivera, the environmental science teacher. She loves the idea and said she'd help us present it to the principal." As we continued to discuss the details, I couldn't help but marvel at how much we'd changed. Just weeks ago, we were ordinary teenagers. Now we were planning events and thinking about ways to make a real difference in the world. Suddenly, Emma gasped, her eyes fixed on something outside the cafe window. "Guys, look." We all turned to see what had caught her attention. At first, I didn't notice anything unusual, just the usual street scene. Then I saw it. A small sapling was growing out of a crack in the sidewalk, its leaves a vibrant green that seemed to glow in the afternoon sun. "Is that?" Lucas trailed off, his eyes wide. Mia nodded, her voice hushed. "It's like the ones in the forest. I can feel it." We quickly gathered our things and hurried outside. As we approached the sapling, I felt that familiar tingle of energy, the same connection to nature that we'd brought back from our adventure. "How is this possible?" Jack wondered, kneeling down to examine the plant more closely. Before anyone could answer, a gentle breeze rustled through the sapling's leaves. To our astonishment, we heard a faint whisper carried on the wind. "Remember, protect, grow." We looked at each other in stunned silence. The voice was unmistakable. It was the forest spirit. "It's reaching out to us," Emma said, her voice filled with wonder. "It's reminding us of our promise." I nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose, and showing us that its influence can extend beyond the forest. This isn't just about protecting what's already there. It's about helping nature reclaim its space in our world. Lucas straightened up, a determined look on his face. "Then we need to think bigger. Our school project is a good start, but we need to reach more people, make a larger impact." "What if we start a social media campaign?" Jack suggested. "We could share photos of nature reclaiming urban spaces, encourage people to plant trees and create green areas in their communities." Mia's eyes lit up. And we could organize nature walks, teach people how to connect with the environment the way we've learned to. As we continued to brainstorm, passersby gave us curious looks, probably wondering why 5 teenagers were so excited about a weed growing through the sidewalk. But we didn't care. We knew we were part of something much bigger than ourselves. We should document everything, I said, pulling out my phone to take a picture of the sapling. Our projects, the changes we see, the way nature is responding. Evidence. The weeks flew by as we threw ourselves into our newfound mission. Our Forest Awareness Week at school had been a resounding success, sparking interest and enthusiasm among our peers. But as we gathered in my backyard on a warm Saturday afternoon, we knew we needed to do more. The social media campaign is gaining traction, Emma reported, scrolling through her phone. Our last post about urban gardening got over 1,000 shares. Jack nodded approvingly. That's great, but I think we need to take more direct action. The city council is voting next month on whether to develop that old lot on Maple Street into a parking garage or a community garden. We should definitely get involved in that, I agreed. But how do we make our voices heard? We're still just high school students. Mia, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly sat up straighter. I have an idea, she said, her eyes gleaming with that otherworldly light we'd all come to recognize. But it's a bit unconventional. Months had passed since our supernatural adventure in the forest, and our efforts to fulfill our promise were in full swing. Our Forest Awareness Week at school had been a resounding success, sparking interest and excitement among our peers. But today marked our biggest challenge yet. We were presenting our environmental initiative to the city council. As we stood outside the imposing city hall building, I could feel the nervous energy radiating from my friends. Remind me again why we thought this was a good idea, Jack muttered, adjusting his tie for the 100th time. Emma placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Because if we want to make a real difference, we need the support of local government. Think big, remember? I took a deep breath, trying to calm my own nerves. We've got this. We know our stuff, and we have something they've never seen before. Mia nodded, her eyes gleaming with determination. Let's show them what the spirit of the forest can do. As we entered the council chambers, the buzz of conversation died down. The council members, seated at a long table, looked at us with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Mayor Thompson, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, called the meeting to order. We'll now hear from the Student Environmental Group regarding their proposed Green City initiative. You have the floor. Lucas stepped forward, his voice steady as he began our presentation. Thank you, Mayor Thompson and council members. We're here today to propose a radical reimagining of our city's relationship with nature. For the next 20 minutes, we took turns explaining our vision. We talked about urban forests, green corridors for wildlife, sustainable architecture, and community gardens. But it wasn't just dry facts and figures. We infused our presentation with the passion and connection we'd gained from our experience. As we spoke, I noticed something extraordinary beginning to happen. The potted plants around the room seemed to perk up, their leaves reaching towards us. A vine by the window began to grow visibly, its tendrils curling around the frame. The council members shifted in their seats, their expressions changing from polite interest to wide-eyed wonder. And so, I said, wrapping up our presentation, we ask for your support in making our city a model of harmony between urban life and nature. Together, we can create a future where concrete jungles become vibrant, living ecosystems. As we finished, silence fell over the room. Then, to our amazement, the silence was broken by the sound of leaves rustling and branches creaking, coming from outside. Councilman Roberts, an elderly man with bushy eyebrows, stood up and walked to the window. "Good Lord," he exclaimed. "You need to see this." We all crowded around the windows, gasping at the sight. The trees lining the street outside had grown noticeably, their branches reaching towards the building. Flowers were blooming in planters that had been empty moments before, and vines were creeping up the sides of nearby buildings. How is this possible?" Mayor Thompson asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I exchanged glances with my friends, silently debating how much to reveal. Finally, Mia spoke up. "It's the spirit of the forest," she said softly. "It's showing its support for our proposal." "Spirit of the forest?" Councilwoman Chen repeated skeptically. "What exactly do you mean by that?" We took turns explaining our experience in the magical forest, careful to emphasize the lessons we'd learned and the connection we'd gained with nature. To our surprise, instead of dismissing us as crazy teenagers, the council listened with rapt attention. "I know it sounds unbelievable," Lucas said, "but look outside. The proof is right in front of you." Mayor Thompson was quiet for a long moment, her gaze moving from us to the transformed landscape outside. Finally, she spoke. "In all my years in office, I've never seen or heard anything like this," she said. "But I can't deny the evidence of my own eyes. Whatever this spirit is, it's clear that you five have tapped into something powerful." She turned to the rest of the council. "I move that we approve funding for a pilot program of the Green City Initiative. All in favor?" To our amazement and delight, every hand in the room went up. As we left City Hall, still buzzing with excitement from our victory, we paused to admire the newly lush streetscape. "We did it," Emma said, her voice filled with awe. "We really did it." Jack grinned, slinging his arms around our shoulders. "And this is just the beginning. Imagine what we can accomplish now that we have the city's support." As we walked down the street, I noticed people stopping to stare at the transformed trees and plants. Some looked confused, others delighted. A little girl was gleefully chasing a butterfly that had appeared seemingly out of nowhere. "You know," I said, watching the scene unfold, "I think we just changed a lot more than just the city's environmental policy. We've given people a glimpse of what's possible when we work in harmony with nature." Lucas nodded thoughtfully. "And maybe, just maybe, we've opened their eyes to the magic that's been around them all along." As we rounded the corner, heading towards our favorite cafe to celebrate, I felt a familiar tingle of energy. The sapling we'd discovered months ago had grown into a small but sturdy tree, its leaves shimmering with an otherworldly light. We paused before it, placing our hands on its trunk in a silent gesture of gratitude and renewed commitment. Our journey was far from over, but with each step, each small victory, we were changing the world. One tree, one mind, one city at a time. And somewhere, in the heart of the ancient forest that had started it all, I knew the spirit was watching, guiding, and maybe even smiling. The summer sun beat down on the newly greened cityscape as we made our way through the bustling farmers' market. It had been 3 months since our presentation to the city council, and the changes were already visible everywhere we looked. "Can you believe how much has changed?" Emma marveled, gesturing to the thriving community garden that had replaced an old parking lot. Jack grinned, plucking a ripe tomato from a nearby stand. "I know. It's like the whole city has come alive." As we wandered through the market, collecting fresh produce for our planned picnic, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Our Green City Initiative had taken root faster than anyone could have imagined, transforming not just the physical landscape, but the very spirit of our community. We found a shady spot under a massive oak tree in the park, one that seemed to have grown years' worth in just a few months. As we spread out our picnic blanket, Mia's phone buzzed. "Guys, you need to see this," she said, her eyes wide as she read the message. "The mayor wants to meet with us. Today." Lucas nearly choked on his apple. "What? Why?" "It doesn't say," Mia replied, looking worried. "Just that it's urgent." We exchanged nervous glances. Despite our success, we couldn't help but wonder if something had gone wrong. An hour later, we found ourselves back in the mayor's office, fidgeting nervously as we waited for her to speak. Mayor Thompson leaned forward, her expression unreadable. "I called you here because something unusual has happened. Something that I think you five might be able to explain." She turned her computer screen towards us, showing a news article with a headline that made our jaws drop. "Mysterious green wave spreads across state. Experts baffled." It seems, the mayor continued, that the remarkable changes we've seen in our city are no longer confined to our borders. Reports are coming in from all over the state of sudden plant growth, cleaner air, and even animals returning to areas they'd abandoned decades ago. We sat in stunned silence, trying to process this information. We had no idea, I finally managed to say. The mayor's stern expression softened slightly. I didn't think you did, but given what you told us about your experience in the forest, I was hoping you might have some insight. Mia closed her eyes for a moment, as if listening to something only she could hear. When she opened them, they shimmered with that now familiar otherworldly light. It's the spirit, she said softly. It's growing stronger, spreading its influence. Our actions, our belief, they've given it power. But how is that possible? Jack asked, his voice a mix of awe and concern. I mean, we're just 5 kids from a small city. Emma leaned forward, her eyes bright with realization. Maybe that's exactly why it's happening. We showed that even a small group can make a big difference. We inspired people, and now they're inspiring others. Lucas nodded slowly. It's like a chain reaction of hope and action. The mayor listened to our theories with rapt attention. When we finished, she was quiet for a long moment. I'll be honest, she finally said. Part of me still has trouble believing in forest spirits and magic, but I can't deny the evidence right in front of me. She stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the transformed city. Whatever is happening, it's clear that you 5 are at the center of it. She turned back to us, her expression determined. I've been in talks with other mayors and state officials. We want to expand the Green City Initiative to a statewide program, and we want you to be part of it. We stared at her in shock. Us? I stammered. But we're just the young people who started a movement that's changing our world. The mayor interrupted with a smile. You have a unique perspective and a connection to whatever this force is. We need your input. As we left the mayor's office, our heads spinning with the magnitude of what we'd just learned, we found ourselves drawn to the small park across from City Hall. The sapling we'd discovered months ago had grown into a young tree, its leaves shimmering with an ethereal light. We gathered around it, placing our hands on its trunk as we'd done so many times before. This time, however, something was different. The energy that flowed through us was stronger, more vibrant. Can you feel it? Mia whispered, her eyes closed in concentration. It's not just the forest spirit anymore. It's like the spirit of the earth itself is awakening. As her words sank in, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. We had started this journey hoping to make a difference in our city. Now, it seemed, we were part of something much bigger, a global awakening that could change the course of our planet's future. So, Jack said, breaking the reverent silence. What do we do now? I looked at my friends, seeing the same determination and sense of purpose reflected in their eyes that I felt in my heart. We keep going, I said firmly. We learn, we teach, we inspire, and we trust in the wisdom of the spirit that brought us together. As we stood there, hands joined around the shimmering tree, I felt a surge of hope unlike anything I'd experienced before. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever obstacles we might face, we were no longer just 5 teenagers with a crazy story. We were the voice of a reawakening world, the ambassadors of a force that could heal our planet. And as the gentle breeze rustled through the leaves above us, carrying the whispered promise of a greener future, I knew that our real adventure was only just beginning. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of change as we stood before the imposing gates of Evergreen Academy. It had been a whirlwind few months since our meeting with the mayor, and now we found ourselves at the threshold of a new challenge. I can't believe we're actually doing this, Jack muttered, adjusting the strap of his backpack nervously. Emma nudged him playfully. Come on, it's not like we're going undercover. We're just student environmental consultants. I couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of our situation. Here we were, 5 teenagers about to advise one of the most prestigious private schools in the state on how to implement our green initiative. As we walked through the meticulously manicured grounds, Mia suddenly stopped, her eyes widening. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. We all paused, reaching out with that extra sense we'd developed since our forest adventure. There was a faint pulse of energy in the air, barely perceptible but undeniably present. Lucas nodded slowly. "It's like the land is sleeping, waiting." Before we could discuss further, a tall woman in a crisp suit approached us, her heels clicking sharply on the pathway. "Welcome to Evergreen Academy. I'm Headmistress Blackwood. You must be the student advisors we've been hearing so much about." As we introduced ourselves, I couldn't help but notice the skepticism in her eyes. It was a look we'd grown accustomed to, adults struggling to reconcile our youth with the impact we'd made. "Well," she said briskly, "let's not waste any time. The board is eager to hear your proposals." The next hour was a blur of presentations, questions, and barely concealed disbelief from the school board. We outlined our plans for sustainable landscaping, energy-efficient buildings, and a curriculum that integrated environmental stewardship into every subject. As we finished, an older gentleman with a shock of white hair leaned forward. "This all sounds very idealistic," he said, his tone making it clear that idealistic wasn't a compliment. "But Evergreen Academy has a reputation to maintain. We can't simply uproot our traditions for the latest trend." I felt a flash of frustration, but before I could respond, Mia stepped forward. Her eyes had that otherworldly gleam that always preceded something extraordinary. "With all due respect, sir," she said, her voice carrying an authority beyond her years, "what we're proposing isn't a trend. It's the future, and it's already here." She walked to the large windows overlooking the school grounds and placed her hand on the glass. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, to our amazement and the board's shock, the manicured lawns began to shimmer with an ethereal light. Before our eyes, wild flowers sprouted among the perfectly trimmed grass. The stately old oak trees seemed to straighten, their leaves taking on a vibrant, healthy glow. A family of rabbits, rarely seen on the carefully tended grounds, emerged from a suddenly lush patch of clover. "This," Mia said softly, "is the true spirit of your academy. Evergreen, ever growing, ever adapting." The board members rushed to the windows, their expressions a mix of awe and disbelief. Headmistress Blackwood was the first to find her voice. How is this possible?" I stepped forward, placing a supportive hand on Mia's shoulder. "It's the same force that's been changing our city, our state, the spirit of nature itself, reawakening, and it's choosing Evergreen Academy as its next haven." The white-haired gentleman who had dismissed us earlier turned to us, his eyes wide. "You five, you're connected to this somehow, aren't you? The rumors about you, they're true?" We exchanged glances, silently debating how much to reveal. Finally, Lucas spoke up. "We had an experience that opened our eyes to the true relationship between humanity and nature. Now we're just trying to help others see it too." The room fell into a contemplative silence, broken only by the occasional gasp as someone noticed a new change in the landscape outside. After what seemed like an eternity, Headmistress Blackwood cleared her throat. "I think," she said slowly, "that we need to seriously reconsider our position. Clearly there are forces at work here that we don't fully understand. But if Evergreen Academy can be at the forefront of this awakening, it would be irresponsible of us to refuse." As the board members nodded in agreement, I felt a wave of relief and excitement wash over me. Another step forward, another seed planted. As we left the academy grounds later that afternoon, the changes were already visible. Students were out on the lawns excitedly examining the new flora. A group of science teachers were huddled near the oak trees, animatedly discussing the implications of what they were seeing. "You know," Emma said as we walked, "a few months ago I would have been terrified of causing such a visible manifestation of whatever this is. But now, it feels right." Jack nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. It's like the spirit is getting stronger, more confident, like it knows it's time to reveal itself more openly. As we reached the gates, I turned back for one last look at the transformed academy. "I think you're right," I said. "And I have a feeling this is just the beginning. The changes we've seen in our city and this school, they're going to keep spreading." Lucas grinned, slinging his arms around our shoulders. "Well then, I guess we'd better be ready. Looks like our little environmental club just got a whole lot bigger." As we walked away from Evergreen Academy, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd just crossed another threshold. The world was changing, awakening, and somehow, we were at the heart of it all. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. Our adventure was far from over. In fact, it felt like it was only just beginning. The winter solstice arrived with a blanket of snow and an air of anticipation. 6 months had passed since our visit to Evergreen Academy, and the changes we'd set in motion had spread far beyond our wildest dreams. As we gathered in Emma's cozy living room, the mood was a mix of excitement and nervous energy. "I still can't believe we're doing this," Jack said, pacing back and forth in front of the fireplace. "A global webinar? What if we mess up?" Mia looked up from her notebook, her eyes glimmering with that now familiar otherworldly light. "We won't. The spirit is with us. Can't you feel it?" I closed my eyes, reaching out with that extra sense we'd developed. Sure enough, there was a pulsing energy in the air, stronger than ever before. "She's right," I said. "It's like the whole world is holding its breath, waiting for us." Lucas chuckled, but it was a sound of wonder rather than doubt. "No pressure or anything, right?" Emma's laptop chimed, breaking the moment. "It's time," she said, her voice steady despite the nervousness in her eyes. "Are we ready?" We gathered around the computer as Emma connected to the webinar platform. Within moments, the screen was filled with faces from around the world. Environmental leaders, government officials, and countless ordinary people who had been touched by the growing wave of change. "Welcome, everyone," I began, my heart pounding but my voice clear. "We're here today to talk about the extraordinary changes that have been sweeping across our planet, and to discuss what comes next." For the next hour, we shared our story, from our initial adventure in the forest to the spreading influence of the nature spirit. We talked about the greening cities, the return of lost species, and the awakening of a global consciousness that was reshaping humanity's relationship with the Earth. As we spoke, messages poured in from viewers around the world, sharing their own experiences of unexplainable natural phenomena and sudden environmental transformations. "It's happening everywhere," a woman from Brazil exclaimed. "The Amazon is regrowing at impossible rates." "The smog in Beijing cleared overnight," a Chinese official reported, his voice filled with awe. "We can see the stars for the first time in decades." As the stories continued to flow in, I felt a surge of emotion. This was so much bigger than us now. It was a planetary awakening. Suddenly, Mia gasped, her eyes wide. "Everyone, quiet," she whispered urgently. "Listen." For a moment, there was silence. Then, faintly at first but growing stronger, we heard it. A sound like wind through leaves, like waves on a shore, like the breath of the earth itself. And within that sound, words. "The time has come." The chat exploded with messages as people from around the world confirmed they had heard it too. "What does it mean?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Before anyone could answer, the room was filled with a soft, green light. It seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once, and in that light we saw visions. Forests regrowing, oceans clearing, animals returning to long-abandoned habitats. We saw cities transformed into green oases, deserts blooming, and people everywhere working in harmony with nature. As the visions faded, leaving us all in a state of stunned silence, I knew what we had to do. "Friends," I said, addressing not just our immediate group, but the thousands watching around the world. "What we've just experienced is a message and a call to action. The spirit of nature that we first encountered in our local forest has grown, spread, and now touches every corner of the earth. It's showing us what's possible if we work together, if we align ourselves with the natural world instead of fighting against it. Emma leaned forward, her eyes shining. But it's not going to happen on its own. The spirit has awakened, has shown us the way, but it's up to us to make this vision a reality. Lucas nodded, picking up the thread. We need to share this knowledge, this connection with nature, as far and wide as we can. Teach others to listen, to feel, to work with the spirit rather than against it. It won't be easy, Jack added, his earlier nervousness replaced with determination. There will be those who resist, who cling to old ways of thinking, but we've seen what's possible. We can't go back. Mia, who had been quiet, her eyes closed in concentration, finally spoke. The spirit is offering us a partnership, she said softly. A chance to heal the wounds we've inflicted on the earth and create a new way of living. But we have to choose it. We have to act. As we looked at each other, then back at the screen filled with faces from around the world, I felt a sense of purpose, unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. So, I said, my voice ringing with conviction, who's with us? Who's ready to help usher in this new age of harmony between humanity and nature? The response was immediate and overwhelming. The chat flooded with messages of support, commitment, and excitement. People were sharing ideas, making plans, connecting with others in their areas to start local initiatives. As the webinar came to a close, we sat in Emma's living room, slightly dazed by the magnitude of what had just happened. Well, Jack said with a nervous laugh, I guess we know what we're doing for the rest of our lives. We all chuckled, but there was a weight to the moment. We had started this journey as 5 ordinary teenagers trying to save a local forest. Now we found ourselves at the forefront of a global movement, partnered with the very spirit of the earth itself. As we looked out at the snow-covered world outside, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. The path ahead would not be easy, but it was necessary. The awakening had begun, and we were its ambassadors. Ready for the next chapter? I asked, looking at my friends. Their answering grins told me everything I needed to know. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, guided by the spirit of nature and driven by our commitment to a better, greener world. The real work was just beginning. Spring had arrived with a vengeance, bringing with it a surge of new growth unlike anything we'd ever seen. As we hiked through the outskirts of our city, now a lush green corridor teeming with life, I couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed in just a few short months. Remember when this was all just scrubland? Emma said, gesturing to the vibrant meadow before us. Lucas nodded, a look of wonder on his face. It's like the whole world's been turned up to 11. We continued our trek in companionable silence, each lost in our own thoughts. The global webinar had been a turning point, catalyzing a movement that spread like wildfire. But with that growth came new challenges, new responsibilities. As we crested a hill, we saw our destination, a clearing where a small crowd had gathered. It was time for another of our Nature Connection workshops. Ready for this? Jack asked, a hint of his old nervousness creeping into his voice. Mia smiled serenely. The spirit is with us. We're as ready as we'll ever be. As we approached the group, I saw faces both familiar and new. Our workshops had become popular, drawing people from all walks of life eager to learn how to connect with the awakening spirit of nature. Welcome, everyone, I began, feeling the now familiar surge of energy as we formed a circle. Today, we're going to delve deeper into the art of communication with the natural world. For the next hour, we guided the group through exercises designed to heighten their awareness and open their senses to the subtle energies around them. It was always a magical experience, watching people's eyes widen as they felt the pulse of life beneath their feet, or heard the whisper of the wind in a whole new way. As the session wound down, a middle-aged woman raised her hand, her expression troubled. "This is all wonderful," she said, "but I can't help worrying. The changes we're seeing, they're happening so fast. What if it's too much? What if we're disrupting the balance of nature even more? I exchanged glances with my friends, seeing my own concerns reflected in their eyes. It was a question we'd been grappling with ourselves. That's a valid concern, Emma said carefully. The truth is we're in uncharted territory. The awakening of the spirit and the rapid changes we're seeing, it's unprecedented. Lucas stepped forward. But we have to remember this isn't just about the physical changes we're seeing in the environment. It's about a fundamental shift in how we as humans relate to the natural world. Exactly, Mia added, her eyes glimmering with that otherworldly light. The spirit isn't just changing the world around us, it's changing us, teaching us to live in harmony with nature rather than trying to control it. An older man at the back of the group spoke up. But what about the economy? These changes are disrupting entire industries. People are losing jobs. It was a tough question, one we'd heard more and more frequently as the changes spread. Jack, surprisingly, was the one to answer. "You're right," he said, his voice steady. "There's no denying that these changes are causing disruption, but they're also creating opportunities. New industries are emerging, focused on sustainable practices and technologies that work with nature instead of against it." I nodded, picking up the thread. The transition isn't easy and it won't happen overnight. But we're seeing governments and businesses around the world stepping up, creating programs for workers, and invest in new, earth-friendly sectors. The group fell silent, absorbing our words. I could see the mix of hope and uncertainty on their faces, a reflection of the global mood as humanity grappled with this new reality. Suddenly, Mia gasped, her eyes going wide. "Everyone quiet," she whispered. We all fell silent, reaching out with our senses as we'd learned to do. At first I heard nothing but leaves and the distant call of birds. But then, gradually, I became aware of something else, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through the very earth beneath our feet. "The spirit," someone whispered. As we stood there, connected in that moment of shared perception, I felt a wave of something, not quite emotion, not quite thought, but a profound sense of rightness, of balance being restored. When the sensation faded, I looked around at the group. Every face showed a mix of wonder and determination. "That," I said softly, "is why we're doing this. That connection, that harmony, it's what we're working towards. It won't always be easy, and there will be challenges along the way. But this is the path to healing our world and ourselves." As we wrapped up the workshop and bid farewell to the participants, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd just experienced something profound. The spirit was growing stronger, its influence more direct, and with that growth came both promise and responsibility. "So," Jack said as we began our hike back to the city, "what's next?" I looked at my friends, these extraordinary people who had become my family through this incredible journey. "We keep going," I said simply. "We teach, we learn, we adapt, and we trust in the wisdom of the spirit that brought us together." As we walked, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The world was changing faster than anyone could have imagined, and we were at the heart of it all. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. Our adventure was far from over. In fact, it felt like we were on the brink of something even bigger, a new chapter in the story of humanity and its relationship with the earth. And as the sun set behind us, painting the sky in vibrant hues that seemed more alive than ever before, I felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, with the spirit of nature as our guide, we would help usher in a new era of harmony and balance for our world. The summer solstice dawned with an electric energy in the air. It had been a year since our global webinar, and the world had transformed in ways we could never have imagined. As we gathered in the heart of what was once our city's bustling downtown, now a thriving eco-metropolis, I couldn't help but marvel at how far we'd come. "Can you believe it's been a year already?" Emma said, her eyes wide as she took in the sight of vertical gardens climbing up skyscrapers and solar panels glinting in the early morning sun. Jack chuckled, shaking his head. Sometimes I still think I'm going to wake up and find out this has all been a dream. We made our way through the crowded streets, nodding at familiar faces and marveling at the changes. The once congested roads were now pedestrian walkways lined with trees and flowering plants. The air was cleaner than it had been in living memory, filled with the songs of birds that had long since abandoned the city. As we approached the central plaza, now a lush park teeming with life, we saw the crowds gathering for the day's celebration. It wasn't just our city. All around the world, people were coming together to mark the anniversary of the global awakening. "Ready for this?" Lucas asked, a hint of nervousness in his voice despite the many speeches we'd given over the past year. Mia smiled serenely, her eyes already taking on that otherworldly glow. "The spirit is with us. We're more than ready." As we took our places on the stage, I looked out at the sea of faces. There were people from all walks of life, all ages, all backgrounds. The awakening had brought us together in ways we never could have predicted. "Friends," I began, my voice carrying across the hushed crowd. "A year ago today, we stood at the precipice of change. We faced a choice: to continue down the path of destruction, or to embrace a new way of living in harmony with our planet." Emma stepped forward. "We chose harmony. We chose to listen to the spirit of nature, to work with it rather than against it. And look at what we've accomplished." A cheer went up from the crowd, and I felt a surge of emotion. It hadn't been an easy year. There had been resistance, setbacks, moments of doubt, but the changes we'd set in motion were undeniable. Lucas took up the thread. "We've seen deserts bloom, oceans heal, and forests regrow. We've developed technologies that work with nature instead of exploiting it. We've rediscovered ancient wisdom and combined it with new understanding." "But our work is far from over," Jack added, his voice strong and confident. "We're still learning, still adapting. The spirit of nature is our partner in this journey, but the choices are ours to make." As if on cue, a hush fell over the crowd. The air seemed to thicken, and I felt that familiar pulse of energy. Mia stepped forward, her eyes blazing with ethereal light. "Listen," she said softly, but her voice carried to every corner of the plaza. "The spirit speaks." And then we heard it. Not with our ears, but with something deeper. A voice that was not a voice. A presence that filled every atom of the air around us. "You have begun well," it seemed to say, though the words were more feeling than sound. "But the journey is long. Balance is not a destination, but a constant effort. Remember this as you move forward." As the presence faded, I saw tears on many faces in the crowd. It was a profound reminder of the responsibility we all shared. "You heard it," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "We've made incredible progress, but this is just the beginning. The spirit has shown us the way, but it's up to us to walk the path." A woman in the front row raised her hand, her eyes shining. "But how? How do we keep this momentum going? How do we ensure we don't backslide into old habits?" It was a question we'd grappled with often over the past year. Emma was the one to answer. "By remembering that every choice matters," she said. "By teaching our children to listen to the world around them. By building systems and societies that prioritize balance and harmony over short-term gain." Lucas nodded. "And by staying connected, to each other, to the spirit, to the web of life we're all part of. That's why gatherings like this are so important." As we continued to field questions and share ideas, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The past year had been extraordinary, but it was clear that we were still at the beginning of this journey. As the celebration wound down and people began to disperse, carrying with them new ideas and renewed commitment, my friends and I found a quiet moment together. "So," Jack said, a hint of his old mischievous grin on his face, "what's next for the world's most unlikely environmental ambassadors?" Mia closed her eyes for a moment, that familiar otherworldly glow suffusing her features. The spirit is calling us, she said softly. There's somewhere we need to go. We all looked at her expectantly, feeling that familiar mix of excitement and trepidation that had become the hallmark of our journey. Where? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. Mia opened her eyes, a smile playing on her lips. Back to where it all began. The forest is calling us home. As we stood there, the 5 of us who had started this journey as ordinary teenagers and now found ourselves at the heart of a global transformation, I felt a shiver of anticipation. The forest where we'd first encountered the spirit, where our lives had changed forever. What new wonders and challenges awaited us there? Well then, Emma said, her voice filled with excitement, I guess it's time for a new adventure. As we made plans to return to our beginnings, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the brink of something even bigger than what we'd already experienced. The world had changed, yes, but the spirit of nature wasn't finished with us yet. Whatever lay ahead, I knew one thing for certain. Together, guided by the spirit and beyond the shared commitment to a better world. The next chapter of our extraordinary journey was about to begin. The familiar scent of pine and damp earth filled our senses as we forest that had changed our lives forever. It had been 2 years since we'd last set foot in these woods, yet it felt like coming home. Exactly the same, Jack murmured, his eyes wide with wonder. Emma shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. No, it's not. Look closer. As we ventured deeper into the forest, I realized she was right. The trees stood taller, their vibrant green. The underbrush was thicker, teeming with light, and there was something else, an energy in the air, palpable and alive. The spirit, Mia whispered, her eyes already taking on that familiar ethereal glow. It's so much stronger here now. We made our way to the clearing where we'd first encountered the spirit of nature. The old, gnarled oak tree at its center seemed to pulse with an inner light, its branches reaching out to us like welcoming arms. Lucas approached the tree, placing his hand on its rough bark. Why did you call us back here? He asked softly. For a moment, there was silence. Then, like a warm breeze through our minds, we felt rather than heard the response. The time has come, the spirit seemed to say, for the next phase of your journey. Suddenly, the clearing was filled with a soft, golden light. Images flashed before our eyes, ancient forests we'd never seen, ice-capped mountains, deep ocean trenches, and sprawling savannas. What is this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Your next task, the spirit replied. The awakening has spread far, but there are still places untouched, sleeping. You must go to them, awaken them, connect them to the whole. As the visions faded, we looked at each other in stunned silence. Emma was the first to find her voice. You want us to travel the world? To awaken other places like we did here? The feeling of affirmation was unmistakable. Jack let out a nervous laugh. Well, I guess we'd better start packing. But how? Lucas asked, always the practical one. We can't just leave everything behind, our families, our responsibilities. The spirit's response was gentle, but firm. The seeds you've planted have taken root. Others can tend them now. This task requires your unique connection, your understanding. Mia nodded slowly, her eyes unfocused as if seeing something beyond our physical reality. It makes sense, she said. We've been preparing for this all along, haven't we? Everything we've learned, everything we've done, it's all been leading to this moment. As the reality of what we were being asked to do sank in, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This wasn't just a new adventure. It was a monumental task that could change the face of our planet even more profoundly than what we'd already accomplished. How long will we be gone? I asked, thinking of our families, our communities. The spirit's response was both comforting and daunting. Time flows differently in the deep places of the world. What may feel like years to you could be months here, or vice versa. But know this, When your task is complete, you will return. We sat in the clearing for hours discussing, planning, and coming to terms with the magnitude of what lay ahead. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees, we finally reached a decision. We'll do it, I said, speaking for all of us. We accept this task. The forest seemed to sigh with relief, and I felt a wave of gratitude and approval from the spirit. But we need some time, Emma added quickly, to say goodbye, to make arrangements. Of course, the spirit seemed to reply. Return here when the moon is full. Your journey will begin then. As we made our way out of the forest, our minds reeling with all we'd learned, Jack suddenly stopped. Hey, he said, a hint of his old mischievous grin returning. Anyone else realize we just agreed to basically become the environmental version of the Avengers? We all burst out laughing, the tension of the day finally breaking. Well, Lucas chuckled, I guess that makes you Hawkeye, Jack. As long as I get to be Black Widow, Emma quipped. As our laughter echoed through the twilight forest, I felt a surge of affection for these friends who had become my family. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever wonders we might encounter, I knew we'd face them together. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of preparations, tearful goodbyes, and hurried arrangements. We entrusted our local projects to capable hands, explained our mission to bewildered but supportive families, and packed for a journey unlike any other. On the night of the full moon, we stood once again in the forest clearing, backpacks at our feet, hearts racing with anticipation. Ready? I asked, looking at each of my friends in turn. They nodded, their faces a mix of determination and excitement. As the moonlight bathed the clearing in silver, we felt the spirit's presence grow stronger. The old oak tree began to glow, its trunk seeming to split open, revealing a shimmering portal of light. This is it, Mia whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. Our next great adventure. Hand in hand, we stepped forward into the light, leaving behind the world we knew and stepping into a realm of untold possibilities. As the forest faded around us, replaced by a swirling vortex of energy, I couldn't help but smile. The next chapter of our journey was about to begin, and with it, a new phase in the awakening of our world. Whatever lay ahead, we were ready to face it together, guided by the spirit of nature and our unwavering commitment to healing our planet. As we plunged into the unknown, the spirit's final words echoed in our minds. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You've taken that step. Now let the true adventure begin. The swirling vortex of light dissipated, and we found ourselves standing on the edge of a vast, snow-covered tundra. The biting cold hit us immediately, a stark contrast to the warm forest we'd left behind. Well, Jack said, his breath visible in the frigid air, I guess we're not in Kansas anymore. Emma pulled her coat tighter around her. Where are we? I closed my eyes, reaching out with that extra sense we'd developed. Siberia, I said with certainty, though I couldn't explain how I knew. We're in the heart of the Siberian wilderness. Mia nodded, her eyes glowing faintly. The spirit brought us here for a reason. Can you feel it? The land. It's sleeping. As we stood there, adjusting to our new surroundings, I began to sense what Mia was talking about. There was a stillness here, a dormant energy waiting to be awakened. Lucas, ever practical, spoke up. We should find shelter. Night will fall soon, and we're not equipped for these temperatures. As if in response to his words, we noticed a faint light in the distance. Trudging through the snow, we made our way towards it, eventually coming upon a small, isolated cabin. An old man, bundled in furs, stood in the doorway, watching our approach with curiosity. As we got closer, he called out in Russian. To our surprise, we understood him perfectly. Another gift from the spirit, it seemed. Who are you? The old man asked. What brings you to this forsaken place? I stepped forward, feeling a sudden certainty about what to say. We're here to wake the sleeping land, I replied. The old man's eyes widened. He studied us for a long moment before nodding slowly. "I've been waiting for you," he said softly. "Come inside. We have much to discuss." Inside the warm cabin, the old man introduced himself as Nikolai. As we sipped hot tea, he told us of the changes he'd observed over the years, the shifting seasons, the melting permafrost, the strange behaviors of animals. "The land is restless," Nikolai said, his weathered face creased with concern. "It's trying to wake up, but something is holding it back." "The spirit brought us here to help," Mia explained. "But we're not sure how." Nikolai nodded thoughtfully. "There's an ancient legend among my people. It speaks of a time when the earth would grow sick, and 5 chosen ones would come to heal it. They would have the power to speak to the land itself." We exchanged glances, the weight of our responsibility settling on our shoulders once again. "What do we need to do?" Emma asked. "There's a sacred place," Nikolai replied, "deep in the tundra. My people have protected it for generations. It's said to be the heart of this land. If you can awaken it, the rest will follow." As night fell, we planned our journey. Nikolai provided us with suitable clothing and supplies along with a crude map to the sacred site. "Be careful," he warned as we prepared to leave the next morning. "The tundra is unforgiving, and there are those who would stop you if they knew your purpose." "What do you mean?" Jack asked, a note of concern in his voice. Nikolai's face darkened. "There are powerful interests here. People who profit from the land's slumber. They won't give up their wealth easily." With this ominous warning in our minds, we set out across the vast white expanse. For days we traveled, battling harsh winds and treacherous ice. But with each step, we felt a growing connection to the land beneath our feet. On the 5th day, we crested a hill and saw our destination, a circle of ancient standing stones, half buried in snow. "This is it," Mia whispered, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. "The heart of the land." As we approached the stone circle, the air around us seemed to thicken. The dormant energy we'd sensed since our arrival intensified, becoming almost tangible. We formed a circle, joining hands as we had done so many times before. Closing our eyes, we reached out with our senses, calling to the sleeping spirit of the land. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, we felt a stirring beneath our feet. A pulse of energy, faint at first, but growing stronger. "It's working," Lucas breathed. But our elation was short-lived. A sudden shout broke our concentration, and we opened our eyes to see a group of men approaching, guns raised. "Step away from the stones," one of them commanded in accented English. "This area is off limits." "We can't stop now," I said urgently to my friends. "We have to complete the awakening." Emma nodded, determination in her eyes. "We'll hold them off. You and Mia finish this." As Jack, Emma, and Lucas moved to intercept the men, buying us time with words and diversions, Mia and I refocused our efforts. We poured every ounce of our energy, every bit of our connection to the spirit, into awakening the land. The ground began to tremble. Cracks appeared in the snow, revealing rich, dark earth beneath. Green shoots burst forth, growing at an impossible rate. The men stopped in their tracks, staring in disbelief at the transformation occurring before their eyes. In a matter of minutes, the barren tundra had become a riot of life and color. As the last of the snow melted away, revealing a lush, vibrant landscape, we felt a presence, vast, ancient, and now fully awake. "Thank you," a voice seemed to whisper on the wind. "We have slumbered for too long." Exhausted but exhilarated, we regrouped, facing the still stunned men. What have you done?" their leader asked, his voice a mix of awe and fear. I stepped forward, feeling the power of the awakened land flowing through me. "We've restored balance," I said simply. "The land is awake now. It will heal itself, and in doing so, help heal the world." As the men lowered their weapons, clearly shaken by what they'd witnessed, we felt a familiar tug, the spirit calling us to our next destination. "Well, team," Jack said with a grin, "looks like our work here is done. Where to next?" As a shimmering portal began to form among the standing stones, we shared a look of excitement and determination. Our journey was far from over, but we had taken a crucial step. The Siberian tundra was awake, and its awakening would ripple out across the world. With one last look at the transformed landscape, we stepped into the portal, ready for whatever challenge awaited us next. The Great Awakening continued, and we were its catalysts, venturing forth into the unknown to heal our planet, one sacred place at a time.